for our organic matter. This is basically a top shelf organic topsoil, together with dirt that we mix on our premises. And what you're seeing here is actually rice husk, and I'm going to explain to you why. After these dirts are blended, and we blend them together, we disinfect them for 60 days. Because what we don't want is we don't want to use dirt from the grounds that are either virgin or been used, because they're known to have bacteria, spores, and molds. So the disinfecting the grounds for 60 days are very important for us, so that the grounds are in the most cleanest state, okay? Why we use the rice husk? For numerous reasons. It helps the composition of the dirt not to be so tight, but at the same time not so loose. And what the husk does, it helps oxygenate the ground, because it becomes porous, because it expands, like you would see a cereal expand with milk. So what this husk does is it allows the root base in those canisters to wrap themselves tightly around the cone, which is essential, because when we pull those out to put them in the transplanter, we don't want any of those veins to have any cuts in them, because it's no different than cutting your arm. And tobacco is like a bad woman. If you cut her, she's going to cut you right back. And what's going to happen is, if it has any damage to it, when you transplant it, it's going to get sick. It's going to pick up spores, it's going to pick up viruses, it's going to pick up molds. So what this tobacco has too is, not only has it been disinfected, it's been sprayed with an algicide, it's been sprayed with a fungicide. We know it's well fertilized. And we trap that for 60 days in visqueen. What that does is, it doesn't allow oxygen to get in, and it kills everything. So it's basically at its cleanest state. Then we bag it, and then we put it in these canisters. These are done also with a soil analysis, so this is perfect dirt to grow tobacco. You guys saw the seed, right? Have you seen Cuban seed? This is Cuban seed here. Now, believe it or not, each one of these produces one plant. Each one of these produces one plant. So, what did we used to do? What we used to do is we used to grab it. Hand that over to me, Micah.
The water, or?
No, yeah, the pail.
Yeah.
Pail. What we used to do is we used to take this canister. A lot of people still do it today. We take a Pepsi cap, see on a 2-liter bottle. It holds 10,000 seeds, pretty much to the top. Some guy years ago measured it, and it really worked. So we pour it in here with clean water, an algicide and fungicide. We stir it. Then we take a furrow. It's about 3 foot wide by 30 foot long, and we go down and we walk it down. If you look at the Perdomo brochure, you'll see a guy who's actually doing it.
Yeah.
That was done in 2003. And what you would do is you'd run it down, and then what happened is the plants in 10 days, would start germinating. But what happens is, since there's so many of them and they're so tight, what are they doing? They're fighting for light, and they're fighting with each other. They're bumping into this guy, he's bumping into this guy, and they're weak because they're fighting. It's like trying to get yourself above the water. So because they're so tight and so compact, and that's the way they've been doing it since before my dad was born, and they still do it in Cuba today, because they don't spend any money in any infrastructure. What happens is you have a weakened plant. Then on top of that, when you pull it out, you're not pulling it out of a cone, you're pulling it out on itself. So what happens is, when the guy pulls it out of the ground, roots break. He puts it in the ground, in the first 5 days, that tobacco falls on the ground. It looks dead. It's called the shock period. And then after 5 days, I call it the hard-on period. She starts straightening back out. You know, like you get up in the morning with a hard-on. But she's been under so much shock that the plant is not going to grow.
It's a big boy.
The plant is not going to grow because at its optimum rate, because it's under so much shock consistently. What happens here is, if you look here, it's important you see this. This has a film. This machine, I think, costs about $7,000.
A little over that.
A little over $7,000. See these microscopic holes? What that does, it has a vacuum and a vibrator system. When you turn on the machine, you have to calibrate the vacuum and you have to calibrate the vibration, because what's going to happen is, it's going to suck one seed in each hole. Now, if you can envision, there's 96 of these holes. Well, guess how many holes are in these canisters? 96. Because this canister was made for this particular film. So it sucks each seed in, and the vibrator starts moving the excess seed. If you have too much vacuum, you're going to put 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 seeds in, which we try not to do. And if you vibrate it too hard, it could kick it out, and then you'll start seeing canisters where seeds don't germinate. Now, if you look, I mean, you can see it's pretty fine. Each one of those is one seed. My fingernails are all dirty because I've been having my hands in all this dirt. But each one of those seeds, believe it or not, is a plant. So a lot of times the guy will say, "Hey Nick, can you give me some Cubans?" And I'll say, "Sure." So I'll give him a little bag, and he'll say, "That's all I get?" I said, "Yeah. Well, do you want to grow 3 acres? Let me know. This is enough for 2." Because it's really, when I give it to you, you can grow a freaking acre if you want of tobacco. And a lot of guys want to grow 5 or 6 plants. I can't give them 5 months. So what I do is I give them a little thimbleful, and they're like, "That's all I get?" I go, "Well, yeah. I think you can grow half of Wisconsin with it." But it's pretty ingenious. So you look at old world methods versus technology. We're kind of different because we've added technology together with traditional methods, and what you do is you get something better. So, I mean, it's great. And what it does is when the machine comes up, and we're gonna do one for you. He lifts it up, it goes down the canister, and boom, shoots a seed right in, and you got it. We're gonna send it. Sylvia grabs the cup. Have you seen this before, Jeff?
Yep.
Kicks off the excess. There's a vibration also that comes down. Voila, there you go.
How long would it take you to do that by hand in the past before this machine?
Well, not only did it take you a long time, it was you talked about being a science and an art. It was a luck. It was luck of the draw because you're planting 10,000 seeds, but you don't know how many are going to germinate. You put the tobacco under so much stress at the same time, and you weren't getting a super plant. This is no different than having a kid, and you're going to train him to be a marathon runner, and you give him the best food, you give him, the best water, you have him run every day, you give him the best shoes, you give him the best training facility, and that's all you do. He's going to be a better runner than some guy gets up in the morning and is just going to eat his Wheaties and go out there and run. It was kind of like, I don't know if you read the story of Todd Marinovich. His dad was going to groom him to be a quarterback. He wouldn't let him eat any candy. He never let him eat anything. He groomed him to be a quarterback. He ended up being one, and a drug addict too, because he was out of his mind because they wouldn't allow him to be a kid. But what this does is this guarantees that the tobacco plant is always at its healthiest stage. It never goes through stress. When you went to the farms and you saw those little plants, did you see them dead? They were absolutely perfect and upright. Because the plant doesn't even know it's been transplanted. Because it's been coddled from the day it started its life all the way to the end. And then you go over here after they're done in the first 10 days, you start getting